Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Steady. I'm Neota Egbe.
It's a beautiful Tuesday morning. Welcome to the program. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf. Good morning and welcome.
Hey, we're up bright and early here in Lagos. We never really sleep in the city. You know how it is. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
And it's the 18th day in the month of April 2023, counting down to the next administration. I'm Ayo Makine. Good morning and welcome.
It appears you're really in a hurry to see the year wind down or move on to something else. When the processes that will get to that point, you don't want to follow through. Calm down. Calm down. I mean, 30 days in the month of April, right? If I'm correct.
He's following the process. He's only reminding us of the dates.
as we said, there are processes that need to be followed. I'm talking about processes.
Yeah.
You know, we had this conversation yesterday about the situation in Adamawa coming from the supplementary elections and coming from the March 18 election into the supplementary and on to now. The processes that will lead to the emergence of the chief executive officer of a state or of any government, as the case may be, need to be followed line upon line, precept upon precept. And to think that the drafters of our laws actually sat down to look at, okay, it's one step after the other. And even in following that step, there's a coverage to your victory that has to be also examined clearly, and it must be seen to be clear. As I said, the election must be seen, not just that you declare it is free and fair, but it must be seen to be free and fair. You know, what's going on right now, it reminds me of what happens in a lawn tennis game or a football game where the umpire says, this is what it is. But this person is declaring, no, I am the one correct. The other one says, I'm the one correct. No wonder in football they came up with the video assistant refereeing system, just so that, hey, when you finish... VAR. So when you finish all your argument, I am correct or you're not correct, there is a system that overlooks what's been, looks at all the evidence and says, okay, this is it, that is that. The umpire still has the final say, as the case may be. Having said that, down to this thing in Adamawa. Yesterday, supporters of both parties, I understand, came out to the streets to declare or demand from INEC that INEC should declare the winner of the election. Whichever way whatever their demands may be, INEC has a responsibility not just to declare the winner, but INEC has to ensure that in declaring the winner, the process is followed through. There was an argument we were having yesterday about how sometimes the umpire might be looking at time against the weight of the process. If you do not go through the right process, what comes out at the other end will be impure. Take, for instance, you wanted to produce, gold, or say diamonds. Diamonds have to go through, fossils have to go through the process of the carbons, have to go through a process of time, pressure, heat, and over time they come out as a diamond. If they don't go through that process, what happens is what you will get is a crystal, or in worst case scenario, is a fossil that you keep in a museum. But if you allow hydrocarbons to go through the process that they're supposed to go through of heat and time and pressure, what you get is a diamond that is very expensive. Can we just let ourselves go through processes effectively so?
You know, I'm not going to argue with you on your knowledge. Is that geology? Because that's certainly something you're bringing to bear here, Nyota. But, you know, and I cannot argue with, you know, the points that you have posited. The situation in Adamawa continues to befuddle everyone, because you have to ask, how is it so difficult to conduct elections in 69 polling units? This is not so many polling units. This is not 1,000. This is not, you know, how many local governments are affected? 69 polling units. I think maximum you're looking at over maybe a little above 37,000 votes is what is involved here. And it is impossible for us to collate it. I mean, everyone says, you know, elections went peacefully. Regardless of the fact that, you know, materials arrived late at the polling centers, there was late deployment of electoral materials. But after that initial hitch that, you know, the voters were not discouraged, they still came out, they cast their ballot. The BVAS, well, we understand was working, was sufficiently deployed. We understand that afterwards, pictures were taken of the results from the different polling units, and, you know, the IREV too was working. So the results were there. Everything appeared to be working. And then when it came to just doing simple arithmetic, it appeared that, you know, there was some difficulty.
Mark, but sometimes arithmetic is not as simple as it appears.
Well, I'm teaching my toddler daughter right now, and I'm trying to, you know, make sure that she understands it is simple. It is very easy. Just, you know, we're even using bottle tops. So if it's so difficult, we can get as many bottle tops from people who scavenge these things, and let us see how we can use it to represent the poll. If it's that difficult, if we can no longer use calculators, you understand. But you know, I'm truly not trying to make light of this, because it has grave implications for our democracy. The fact that, you know, we understand that collation was suspended the night before to resume at a certain time. Journalists were waiting. People were waiting to be, you know, to come at a certain time to resume collation. And this collation started, you know, purported declaration was made just before the time that, you know, people were supposed to have resumed at the collation center. So it does raise a lot of questions as to what precisely is happening. Why is it that the rest of the collation wasn't done? You know, and INEC has said, look, everything has happened. INEC at the national headquarters has said everything should be suspended. Bring it to the national and let them go through the, you know, review what has gone on. But it does appear that there is an attempt to scuttle the process. We sincerely hope not. We hope that, you know, that all parties concerned in this matter will subject themselves to due process. It is very odd that when a winner is declared, it is the winner that runs to court. I've never seen it before. Usually it is parties that are aggrieved that run to court. So before the judiciary does its own part, one would imagine that INEC would have fully exhausted you know, everything that it can possibly do before the judiciary, you know, is brought in. So let us hope that, you know, the people of Adamawa, they've conducted themselves really well. They have only done peaceful protests. I mean, regardless of whatever side they belong to, they have only done peaceful protests. But I do not want to believe that in this instance. I think INEC still has a lot of powers to wield in this process. People will be looking just beyond it, even after the process has been concluded. You know, and the declaration is eventually made. For the person who would have caused this sort of situation in Adamawa, I also want to believe that it is something an INEC will need to take up. So let us wait and see just what happens in Adamawa, but we certainly have all eyes. Adamawa wasn't the only place where the supplementary elections happened. So there needs to be questions asked as to why this is the only place where we're seeing this sort of situation. It is truly troubling, and I'm hoping that, you know, there will be justice done and seen to be done at the end of the day. Gentlemen.
Really, what more can we add? I think this situation has helped a lot of Nigerians to see the, well, I'd say, unique situation that INEC is in. The fact that there are now questions about just how much control INEC has on its first senior officers. You know, we could talk about the resident electoral commissioners and all of that, and the ad hoc officials. Don't forget, it takes thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people to conduct a national election across all the states of the country. So clearly we're seeing, you know, issues around just how much control INEC at the national level is able to wield on its officers across board. And I think this is something that will form a major part of not just conversation, but maybe lawmaking, such that there's better control of the processes, because INEC can have a plan for elections, but they have to rely on officials to carry out those duties, talking about the senior officials, ad hoc officials, and all of that. So we need to ensure that we have, you know, almost a fail-safe system, such that, you know, what you plan at the national level or state level is what is actually implemented deep down to the hinterland. And I do hope that this 2023 election will be the end to the anyhowness we have seen play out in the political space time and again. Believe me, these things have been happening, as I say, time immemorial. thank God we have internet. Thank God we have mobile phones. Thank God we have social media now. So these things cannot happen behind the scenes and then nobody will get to know. I mean, 2007 is a clear example of some of the very, very intriguing, dramatic elections we've had in Nigeria. So extreme that you can't even lay hold of the, election results at the national level. You have to go to the states and start picking the elections one by one. It's an election that is not even really represented on the map. All we know is we had results and we've moved on since then. And the challenge for me here is, excuse me, a lot of new voters are watching. They're seeing how the process is going and they're wondering, oh, is this how we should do it? Don't forget, these people will then grow up to be contenders in elections. They'll grow up to be politicians. And if this is what we're teaching them, you wonder what democracy will be like in Nigeria in 10 years, 15 years, when they are ripe enough to aspire for the position of governor, to be a rec, for example, or to be in a position of authority. So even if we're not thinking about today, let us think about our tomorrow.
Guys, just for clarity, what are the facts that we are speaking to? We had this conversation yesterday, as Nyota pointed out, and we listened to all shades of opinions. And it was very interesting, comical even, to listen to some viewpoints, and you wonder exactly where is this coming from.
Are we reading the same constitution?
Just to be clear, the Electoral Act of 2022, Section 25, subsection 2F says, the returning officer shall announce the result and declare the winner of the election at F, State Collation Center in the case of election of a governor of a state. This is the premise upon which INEC took the decision that it took.
Just to be clear, right?
Just to be clear. The picture you saw the other time of a gentleman, speaking was that of the resident electoral commissioner, who is not the person, the
returning officer,
who is not the returning officer. It is only in the case of the presidential election that the INEC chairman is also the chief returning officer of the election. And I don't think there's anything that's befuddling in all of that. Neata, you were citing the example of some mineral resources the other time, and it just brought to my mind something that we talked about in one of these proverbs you also find in scriptures that says, the furnace is for gold, the silver is for a refining pot. In other words, if you try to process gold in a refining pot, it will not be pure. If you try to process silver in a furnace, it will be destroyed. So exactly what kind of process are we working towards? Our democracy is 24 years now, we say, and we are happy for the progress that we have made so far. But the question is, exactly how do we want to solidify it going forward? What's interesting, the whole world is watching, and guess what? As Kayode said, the children are watching. I mean, just imagine, you taught a child technical drawing in school, and this child aspires to become an architect. The basics were learnt from technical drawing. And these children are watching. The 24-year-old today is able to vote. Guess what? This democracy started 24 years ago, and the 24-year-old is able to vote. These 24-year-olds, some of them are already in government at various levels in the states. What are we teaching them? What are we bequeathing to them? They are watching. Should people be tired of political parties simply because some politicians would rather prioritize certain interests over others, especially when it favors them? We are one Nigeria. Can we prioritize Nigeria over any other interest? Guys.
Well, whatever the situation might be, at the end of the day, the choice of the people in a democracy must stand and must be seen to have been followed through. Because, as we say, democracy is for the people, by the people, and so it must be seen to be democratically done. So, INEC, you have your job cut out for you, but let it be in line with the laws of the land and the decision of the people. Sunrise Daily will be back in a moment. Please stay with us. And we'll start out with a look at the Guardian newspaper. The major headline, 40% of failed transactions unresolved as e-payments hit 49.4 trillion naira. So the Guardian starts out today with a look at what is going on in the financial sector. You remember just before the elections, Malcolm, the issues with cash flow, inability to make transfers or receive transfers. Well, they're talking about the fact that 40% of such transactions are yet to be resolved. Someone told me of how he made a transaction on Friday. He made a transaction on Friday, a transfer. It did not reflect until yesterday evening.
That's Monday evening.
No, Friday evening.
Yeah, that's the person didn't receive it
until yesterday
evening.
Yesterday evening.
Did it go by post?
Well, electronic post. Well, check page 6 and find out the details of that story, and there you see the declined transaction picture on that POS there. But below that, new wave of kidnappings amid botched Naira redesign policy. So there might be a need to examine exactly what's the relationship between the newly designed Naira notes and the wave of kidnapping, because it looks like within that period, you weren't hearing much about kidnapping or bandage attacks and all of that. But suddenly,
or maybe there was a lot more focus on the fact that the Naira was scarce, and maybe these issues were not being reported on the front pages. You know, these are all the possibilities.
Indeed. Well, check out page 4 for it's a news analysis. Then NAFDAC grants provisional approval for first malaria vaccine in Nigeria.
I know people who are willing to be guinea pigs for that particular vaccine,
Why?
but I hear it's just for children for now. I mean, children within a certain age bracket. A lot of adults that want to go and queue for that particular vaccine.
I don't know about that. Anyway, check page 3, page 3, get more details on that. Aviation workers reject federal government's plea, disrupt flight operations over conditions of service. That's COS and welfare. Check page 3. Fresh oil output concerns. ExxonMobil declares force majeure. And that's it. At the bottom there, Adamawa, despite Rex suspension, PDP insists on protest till poll concludes. It's on page 6. But that's it from The Guardian.
Well, leadership is the next one here. And look at this. Adamawa governorship. INEC has no power to void my declaration, Binani tells court. That's what she's saying. Page 4 is where you find details. Very, very queer situation that we have found happening in Adamawa. Look at this. PDP governors demand end to electoral imbroglio. Commission suspends REC, Hudu Yunusa Ari for inglorious act to decide on poll today. So the commission certainly is not hindered by that particular petition in court. PDP supporters protest in Yola. Page 4 is where you'll find details. That's what is the lead story on the front page there. But take a look at the pictures that you see. What more than 1,000 words, each one of them. Look at that. Passengers trek to catch flight as unions ground airports. So that's what you find on page 8 of the paper. Different scenarios in Abuja, in Lagos. That's the picture that you're seeing on the front page. People carrying their luggage on Okada, people carrying it on their head, you know, just to be able to make it in time for their flights. But the flights, you know, eventually, you know, leave the ground. In some instances they did, in others they didn't. So this is a situation. They tried to capture it on the front page for you. Look at this. Defend Nigeria at all cost. COAS charges troops. That is on the front page as well. NLC vows to flush out usurpers from Labour Party. It's on page 23 of the paper. They have a number of other stories on the corner there. Stop killings in southern Kaduna, Benue, Taraba now. It's on page 15. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
Well, this Nigeria has a rather interesting caption for its, big story. Take a look at it. Play on words. You were reckless. INEC hits hard at Adamawa electoral official Yunusa Ari.
You should read it the way it was written.
That's the way it was.
No, you were reckless. less.
Oh, wow.
Yes. That's
Okay, there you go. Same word, though. Same spelling, well, different emphasis. And they ask him to stay away from office. Protests erupt as PDP demands announcement of election results. And just right next to that, caption is his passport, just right there on the front page. And you see that story, travelers stranded as aviation workers strike, cripple activities in Lagos, Abuja, other airports. This is one strike that really, if you were caught in the middle of it, you know how it feels. Imagine you were to travel for a very important either medical appointment, examination, could have been an official assignment or a job interview, the list goes on and on. And the trick about going by air is, the point of going by air is because you can't necessarily go by road. Going by road would probably be...
Took you a lot longer.
A longer time, definitely.
A lot riskier as far as many people are concerned.
So you are just stuck and you have to just wait. Either, you hope the airline will also be a bit understanding and all of that, but this is not a pretty sight. I will be getting into that this morning because the aviation sector usually is the lifeblood of an economy, especially that's where you see people flying to do businesses, to, resolve deals and all of that. So it's going to be a big conversation.
Well, many people will agree with you that indeed it is the lifeblood of the economy, so to speak. There are those who wonder, is it perceived as such by the authorities?
Are we treating it with such
Are we treating
seriousness?
it as seriously as we say it is, if the life is in the blood?
We'll get the answers, hopefully, to that this morning. Just one more for you. It's a very shocking story. This one hit me. Woman sells 18-month-old baby for 600,000 naira to offset bank loan. This one happened in Ogun State. It's on page 15. That's this Nigeria.
I don't know what to say to that. It's really heart-wrenching.
Really.
Daily Independent departs a little bit from a lot of the stories you find on the front pages of previous papers. Look at it. It's about fuel subsidy removal, and here's the story. FG may spend more than $800 million earmarked for palliative. Minister explains why cost of servicing foreign debt is rising. I'm lost. I hope that if I'm able to read the story through,
Will be found.
I'll be found. Because the story is on page 7. It's not a new story, but it's right there on the front page of Daily Independent this morning. Right under the picture you see on the front page is another rather curious one. Labour Party crisis. NLC president, others lead Abure to party secretariat in Abuja. Warn factional chairman Apapa to stay away. What does that mean? Find the details on the inside pages. Talking about factional chairman, under that story you find drama as police arrest APGA factional chairman in court premises. Find the details of that on page 29 of the paper this morning. And of course, you'll find the aviation story on the right above the nameplate of Daily Independent this morning as well. That's the paper today.
And Daily Trust is next with that Adamawa election headline. PDP supporters protest, gave INEC 72-hour ultimatum. Continues on page 4, but see the writers. Binani heads to court, insist on Rex declaration. INEC shifts emergency meeting to today. Embattled Rex suspended. SDP candidate seeks disqualification of Binani Fintiri. Oh, page 4 has it there. I guess when two elephants are fighting, it's the grass that suffers, but sometimes the rats will begin to come out under the elephants and say, hey, well, I'm here. Push these guys out. Let's focus on the people. I guess that's what they're... But go read page 4 and find out exactly why the SDP candidate wants that to happen. Let's go just below the nameplate. Nigeria becomes second nation to approve R21 malaria vaccine is on page 7. And instead of flying, passengers trek as workers protest at Lagos airport. So they wanted to fly, but now they're trekking. Page 23.
There's a trek before they fly.
There's a trek before they fly. Page 12 has a story about the Labour Party and the crisis there. Abure others remain suspended. Court insists. And health news here. Cholera kills 79 in Kanu, Bauchi, Osun, Abia, and Cross Rivers. and 7 others is on page 30. Tinubu micromanages team more than Buhari. That's coming from Fashola. And to you out there who's working in any company, be careful how you celebrate. Driver jailed 15 months for celebrating election victory with company's vehicle. Whose victory is that driver celebrating? Now he's going to jail for 15 months for using a company vehicle to celebrate election victory. Check page 21 to know whose victory he's celebrating. And that's it from Daily Trust.
Yeah, especially if he was working for the opponent. Yeah, but what law would he have broken?
Well, company rules and regulations, probably.
Does it earn you a jail term?
I don't know.
At most, shouldn't it be a sack?
For him to be going to jail, the courts must have come in. So.
Okay. It'd be interesting to read what
Page
law
21.
he had broken, not just rules now, what law he had broken, to have been found guilty and sentenced to a jail term. But look at what New Telegraph has on the front page for you. Nigeria's revenue threatened as Exxon units declare force majeure. Firm among country's largest oil producers. So that's on the front page there. Crisis being resolved. That's according to the management. And look at that. We're not exiting Nigeria, rather deepening our operations. That's according to Shell. You find details on pages 3 and 7 of the paper. You know that for some time now, Shell has been divesting its assets, moving into the deep offshore. You might want to see why on page 7 of the paper. Take a look at this. Supplementary polls, INEC suspends Adamawa rec. Warns him to stay away from Commission's office until further notice. Directs Administrative Secretary to take full charge. Weed out partisan corrupt officials, PDP governors tell INEC. Pages 4 and 5 is where you find details. Now take a look at this. Cash crisis. POS deals rise 39.17% to 323.7 billion naira in Q1 2023. So very interesting to note that our POS operators now have work to do. You know, there's this new thing that's happening now. Even when you go to the ATM, some ATMs don't serve customers that are not from their bank. Some will give you a limit. You can't withdraw more than 5,000 naira at once. So I read, and you know that if you're using an ATM that is not from your bank,
You're still
after
charged.
the third transaction, you have to start paying 53 naira on every transaction that you make. So you have to ask, really, was this thing to extort? Was it really to force us to go cashless, or was it to, for banks to find new ways of extorting customers?
Or making alarming profits.
I don't know really, but you find details somewhere on page 3 of the paper. They have a number of other stories there. JAMB extends 2023 direct entry registration by 1 week. So in case you're hoping to do direct entry, at least there's a 1 week leeway made there for you. Alleged 5.2 billion naira fraud. Key witness in ex-JAMB registrar trial dies. Okay, so that case might be stalled as a result, so maybe they will have to find another witness. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Well, take a look at Nigerian Tribune. It's also focused on what's going on in Adamawa State. More knocks for Adamawa Rec as Binani goes to court. And the host of riders, of course, you see there. INEC suspends him. PDP governors call his action show of shame. Want appointments of Recs reviewed. Makinde visits Fintiri. In fact, that's the picture you find there on the front page. So pages 4 and 5 for you. And you see this one just at the right top corner of the front page. NLC officials visit LP Secretariat. Back Aburi-led EXCO. So a lot is playing out in Labour Party as well. In fact, we'll be getting deep into the Labour Party affairs this morning on the show. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune. And that's it with a look at the dailies. We're just getting started, obviously. Some insight into what we're discussing, yes, I have given you. So get ready as we get started in a couple of moments. Stay with us.
heavy traffic at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos due to the two-day industrial action embarked upon by members of the Air Transport Services Senior Staff Association of Nigeria and other aviation unions. The unions are calling on the federal government to grant their demands, which include the non-implementation of minimum wage, consequential adjustments and arrears for the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, as well as the planned demolition of agency building in Lagos for an airport city project by the Minister of Aviation.
It's a warning strike, 2 days warning strike. The idea is to get the government to act expeditiously on those issues so that we will not have any cause to embark on a full blast strike. But I can assure you that we are open to engagement. I must say it is regrettable that this strike is taking place today. If the relevant government agencies have done the right thing, there were several interventions on our part for them to call us to discuss this issue, even when a deadline of 31st day of March was given to us, that they were going to call us back to brief us on what they had done thus far in terms of getting the conditions of service out and consequential adjustment for our members in NIMET. They did not deem it necessary to call us back to a meeting. All entreaties on our part fell on deaf ears.
Despite the warning by the aviation unions, the Port Harcourt International Airport continues to operate unhindered. A visit to the facility by a crew shows that passengers are being attended to with nothing to suggest that a warning strike is on. Some of the union leaders who spoke to our correspondent at the airport explained why they decided to take that approach.
The affected agencies in the aviation union are NAMA, NCA, INCANT, and NIMET. So FAN is in solidarity with these other agencies because their request on condition of service and as well the consequential adjustment has not been met in these agencies.
On this unionism, we don't have to start destroying facilities or start causing go slow everywhere to put tension into people.
Meanwhile, aviation workers in Kaduna on Monday also shut down activities at the airport as they joined their counterparts across the nation on a two-day warning strike. They blocked the roads leading to the airport, locked up offices including the terminal building as well as the control tower.
Let's dive into the issues as we welcome Ocheme Abba, who is General Secretary, National Union of Air Transport Employees, as well as the Chairman, Association of Aviation Training Organizations of Nigeria, Bankole Bernard. Both of them join us virtually. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, gentlemen. Let me begin with you, Mr. Abba. There are those who are wondering why now? And as we highlighted earlier, the disruptions have affected quite a number of people in no mean measures. Why now?
Well, there is always a time for everything, and no time to disrupt activities is a good time. So now, because it is at this time that the circumstances of the situation has peaked to the point where it is no longer possible to continue to forbear with the relevant agencies of government. These issues have lasted between 7 up to 13 years in the making, and every effort to get amelioration has failed. And so now is the only time left, and this option is the only option left for us to address the situation.
Okay.
That's why it is.
Well, Mr. Bernard, let me ask you perhaps the same question, but in a different way. And as you've heard Mr. Abba said, it's lasted between up to about 13 years. Those who will be wondering, What efforts have been made over the past 13 years to ensure that we do not get to this point?
Well, good morning once again. It's actually very clear that the issue at hand now boils down to the fact that there's a trust.
Let me tell everybody not to come here.
Considering the fact
Nobody
that
come near here.
we're transitioning into a new government. So the whole idea of the union taking this action at this particular point in time is, if we waited this long and nothing has been done, what is the guarantee that the new administration is going to listen to us, considering the fact that this particular administration is going to be winding down in less than 2 months, and before a new minister is selected or appointed rather to take up the portfolio. So the earlier we get this thing done, the better for all of us. But in all of it, it's a warning strike and it's a 2-day strike. I want to believe that there's room for engagement, and the engagement needs to happen like now. Over the last few years, the present Minister of Aviation and the person of Senator Hadi Sirika have witnessed a couple of stakeholders meeting, which means that he's opened to this kind of dialogue. So I want to see a dialogue ensue between this the union and the aviation leadership to ensure that we bring this to an end as quick as possible. Because mind you, aviation is very sensitive and it's more like the most reliable means of transportation for people moving within the country. So my appeal will be that, can we get this sorted as quick as possible and not dwell on the issue of trust? That can we trust the new coming administration to listen to our cause? I think we have to get it done and get it done like now. That's what I believe.
Okay, well, let me come back to you, Mr. Abba. There are those who would also be wondering, hey, there are quite a number of stakeholders that are involved in this. I mean, Mr. Bernard has just spoken about the involvement of the Minister of Aviation. But then there are other stakeholders who operate at the airports, the authorities, the NCAA, the FAAN, and all of that. Which agencies of government, or at what level of government should these conversations be holding? And why have it seemed to be stagnated over the years? Mr. Abba, that's for you.
Now, quite frankly, the issues have gone beyond the levels of the agencies as well as the Ministry of Aviation. They are currently firmly squared with the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission, as well as Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation. The agencies and the various unions have negotiated these conditions of service. 7, 8, 9, 10, up to 13 years for the various agencies. And the agencies are the Airspace Management Agency, the Civil Aviation Authority, the College of Aviation Technology, as well as the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, 4 of them. And these negotiated conditions of service have been processed through the Ministry of Aviation to the Salaries and Wages Commission and the Head of Civil Service. And for this number of years, these agencies of government have been processing the approval of this. In February last year, the Honorable Minister of Labour, because of an ultimatum that was issued, called all the agencies together with the Minister of Aviation himself. These 2 ministers supervised a meeting that lasted into 1 a.m., at the end of which a memorandum of agreement was signed. Meaning that all the outstanding issues, including the conditions of service issues, were given time limits within which they were supposed to be released and done with. they were not done with. This very agency, the Salaries and Wages Commission, further came to Lagos and engaged all the agencies and the unions, also last year, at about March, April. And all the agencies sat one by one with the Salaries and Wages Commission in order to fine-tune whatever was outstanding. And up till now, after that exercise, the agencies and the Salaries and Wages Commission still has refused to release those documents. After the agencies signed and told them, this we negotiated and we are able to pay from our internally generated revenue. Up till the time we speak, the Salaries and Wages Commission is still arranging to meet with the agencies. So how long are we going to continue to play this game? The Minister of Labour has done his best. The Minister of Aviation has done his best. With respect to the minimum wage consequential adjustment, including the intervention of the Minister of Labour, the Minister of Aviation, and the Palm State Ministry of Aviation. Because NIMET is on IPPIs, that's on the government payroll system. And so they have decided that they are going to start the implementation this month. But they have arrears since 2019, and nobody is talking about it. There is no arrangement that will say, this is how we are going to sequence out the payments. And we have also told the Minister of Aviation, you want to demolish this agency's headquarters, you want to build an airport city, fine and good. But these are places where people work and earn a living. So if you are going to carry out the demolition act, shouldn't we have a more planned and sequenced program so that these people can have alternative places where they can work? And those who are going to be relocated to other places can be paid their due allowances so they could go there and work. What is the hurry? It's not as if something odd will happen if we do not build the airport city today or tomorrow. And this is the twilight of the administration. So this is all building to suspicion and people having to think perhaps there's something untowards about this. So these are generally what the issues are. And with regard to the payment of Salaries and Wages Commission, it is them to release. No process, every process have been completed. We release this approval.
All right. Just for the benefit of a lot of Nigerians, some of them didn't even know anything like this was going on. They just know they want to go to the airport, they want to travel, and they were stranded yesterday. By the way, I see that it looks like there's some activity around you. So that means that today's day 2 strike, or at least the action, is on right now. Am I correct?
Yes, you are very correct.
Okay, so for the benefit of those who are trying to just wrap their heads around it, maybe they're not in government, they're just Nigerians, but they need to understand the issues. Just how many issues are at stake right now? I know you mentioned the aviation complex, you mentioned the consequential adjustment for the minimum wage, 2019 up until now, 4 years. You also said it's been on for 13 years. So if you could just count so that Nigerians can follow, just to what extent has there been some sort of conversation? Because I understand there was a meeting on Sunday which deadlocked. So there was that meeting. Why did it deadlock? But particularly, how many issues are at stake, really?
Okay, there are just 3 simple issues at stake. One of them is the payment of minimum wage consequential adjustment, which is consequent to the Minimum Wage Act of 2019, which every government agency have benefited from. At this moment, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency is yet to benefit from it. In February last year, through the Minister of Labour brokering this meeting, the consequential adjustment for all the other agencies on aviation was done and they have been implemented. But that of NIMET is yet to be implemented because it is on government payroll. And so that is an issue that is outstanding. Second one is that the conditions of service for the 4 agencies that I named earlier have remained in the vaults of the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission and the Office of the Head of Service of the Federation for the past 7 to 13 years under processing. And the workers can no longer continue to wait because these conditions of service ought to have been renewed about 3 times within this period of waiting. So workers have been stagnated for 7, 9 to 13 years. And the third issue is the planned demolition of the headquarters of the agencies. And so, we have three issues. We have three issues that we are addressing right now.
Just before I go to Mr. Bernard, let me just quickly ask you. You didn't speak to that meeting which deadlocked on Sunday and why it deadlocked. Also, the Minister of Aviation, I remember, I think when NACO went on strike, I think it was in January, the Minister of Aviation was asked about it, and he said that, well, according to the FAN Act, which has been assented to by the President, it prohibits industrial actions around airports. And at that time, he says that the government will ensure that no essential service is disrupted by anyone, no matter how aggrieved. That was in January. This is April, and we're seeing even a bigger strike, it would seem. So I'd like you to respond to that statement made by the Minister of Aviation regarding, actions, industrial actions around airports.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. First, the meeting of Sunday was deadlocked because all the government agencies present, nobody could give a guarantee of when these conditions of service for the agencies would be released. Nobody could give any guarantees. And so we were also unable to give any assurances of not going on strike. That was the deadlock. Now, with regards to, however, it's important also to note, we understand that the Salaries and Wages Commission has also convened another meeting with the agencies today. We don't know, we are not invited to the meeting, so we don't know what discussions are ongoing and how that will pan out relevant to the situation at hand. Secondly, with regards to aviation being an essential services provider, this is a fallacy. It's not correct at all. The International Labour Organization, through its official instruments of action, has already defined what essential service is and has also clearly defined that aviation is not an essential services provider except the services provided through air traffic control. And for the benefit of our listeners, an essential service is one through which its withdrawal may affect the lives of groups of people. If you withdraw that service, it means you put at risk many lives. And aviation does not provide such service except through air traffic control. In other words, for example, if an air traffic control says airplane should not land, for example, you might be putting to risk the people who are in that aircraft. But when you say aircraft should not take off, no risk. You are not putting anybody's life at risk. And the services that airlines provide is not different from the services that Ekene Dilichukwu or any transport company provides. So aviation activities are not essential services by the definition of the International Labour Organization. Beyond that, the National Industrial Court has ruled that aviation or airlines do not render essential services.
All right,
so,
Mr. Abba.
That's the situation.
I mean, some would also bring in the conversation around air ambulances and all of that, whether or not you consider them as essential, and will they be affected by this, since we know clearly that they convey people to hospitals when emergencies happen. So I wonder if that's also being considered.
Just like you know that Nigerian hospitals, Nigerian doctors have been continuously going on strike without any talk about essential services. So I don't know where this situates. This talk about essential services and not going on strike is neither here nor there.
All right.
So hospitals go on strike.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Bernard. Lots of issues have been brought into play right now. And, we like to refer to people who want to travel for various reasons, and they're at the receiving end of this. A lot of them clearly have paid for their airfares. All they expect is for the other side to, meet the end of the bargain. So seeing how these issues are playing out 2 days, it shouldn't escalate beyond this, except the issues are not resolved. Is there an easy way to resolve this from government? Because it appears as though after the meeting deadlock, because he says government did not give a word, something definitive. Do you still think that government is able to resolve this in a simple manner?
Well, I'll still come back to the issue of trust that I spoke about earlier. And while Mr. Abba was speaking, he has exonerated the Minister of Aviation, the Minister of Labor. And on this same breath and in this same government, we're talking about another aspect of the government that has refused to yield to their demands. I would have thought that this kind of protest, we would have sealed the office of the head of service and make life uncomfortable for the workers as well as the head of service. But that was not done. But the general masses that are going their normal way are the ones that are fully affected by this action. It doesn't mean that their demands are not right, but I think their demands should be channeled to those that have created the problem rather than the innocent masses that need to enjoy services that they have paid for. As you're equally aware, there's been strike in France for God knows how long now. And I haven't seen where they have shut down the entire airspace. But they haven't done that because they feel that they need to face the government and face the government squarely to resolve the issue at hand. I will encourage Mr. Abba and the other members that, look, let us narrow this issue down because Mr. Abba has mentioned 3 different issues. So the question now is, how do we address it? We're talking about demolition. It's a different issue on its own. We're talking about the welfare and the salary wages it's a different issue on its own. And here we are, that we've merged everything together because there's no trust, as it were, right now, because this present government will elapse in the next 2 months. And once the government is out, they don't feel that demand that they've been fighting over the years is going to be met. So it means that the new government, they will have to start all over with the new government, and they are feeling that it's about the right time for them to carry this thing out, carry this strike out, and make sure that it is effective. Because if it's not effective, if the masses do not feel it, the government will not listen to them. But I believe that we cannot give up on engagement. Engagement is highly necessary because that is more like the best way to get things done. Thank you.
Okay, let me ask Mr. Abba a question now. I'd like to find out, this building of Aerotropolis, which we understand is going to affect the offices of your agencies. I'm wondering, have alternatives been provided? What sort of conversation is ongoing with regards to that? Is it that you're really opposed to the building of the Aerotropolis, or because your buildings are directly affected is why you're kicking against this? Oh dear, it appears that Mr. Abba we've lost him just there, but he was the one that I had that question for. It does appear that part of the demands of the workers is the fact that their buildings are going to be affected in favor of an Aerotropolis. Since this is one of the demands that they're, making, how do you think, I know you've spoken in general terms, in terms of how this particular issue be addressed, but if this is part of the concern that they have, that the building is about to go down in favor of an Aerotropolis, that's something that ordinarily should not have been objected to, assuming alternatives were provided. Do you think that the authorities in this regard also bear responsibility for the reaction of the workers? This is for you now, Mr. Bernard.
I mean, yes, I really believe that the government should have provided an alternative accommodation for the agencies, which is the normal thing that should have been done. But like I said to you, if you look at these issues, this if you're talking about the accommodation, is an issue that can easily be resolved. But we have three combined issues that are being addressed by this strike action. The question is, if the government provides an accommodation right now for the agencies, does that mean that the union will no longer embark on strike in the future concerning these two other issues? Of course not. There's still going to be issues. There's issues surrounding the welfare of the union, which has lingered for years. And I so much believe that should be addressed, or the strike action should be at the office of the head of service and ensure that what has been agreed is being implemented. It is one government. So the government cannot be saying yes under one breath and the other breath they are saying no. So we have to be able to harmonize it and get them to do the right thing. So issue of accommodation can easily be sorted out with the Honorable Minister of Aviation, and that will be taken out.
Okay.
But creating this huge inconvenience, loss of funds, grounding of business for the entire aviation industry, it's unfair on the masses.
Well, I understand that, Mr. Abba.
I think there's a better way of getting it done.
I understand Mr. Abba is back now. I'd like to find out, it'll be interesting to find out from him, first, if he agrees with you that this protest should have happened at the office of the head of service, since that's where the conditions of service can be addressed. But also, it will be important for him to also address this question as to whether or not alternatives were made for the accommodation of the agencies, since there's a plan to pull down their offices in favor of an aerotropolis. So, Mr. Abba, if you can hear me, I'd asked these questions earlier. What do you say to those who think that this protest should have been happening at the office of the head of service?
It's muted.
Mr. Abba, if you can hear me, please unmute and you can answer our questions, please.
I'm actually unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Now, the issue of this protest is a withdrawal of service. We are saying that we can no longer continue to work under these conditions. And so we are withdrawing our services. We are not working for the Salaries and Wages Commission or the Office of the Head of Civil Service. So we can't withdraw our services there. You withdraw your services from where you are working. It's a decision that we can't continue to work under these adverse conditions. That's what this protest is about. And with regard to the issue of alternative accommodation, that's exactly what we're asking for. We're saying that the airport city or electropolis is not an emergency. There is no life depends on it. So we can give ourselves some time so that we can have a planned or phased approach. So we can start by first providing alternative accommodation and then moving people to where, if those who may not be needed here, we can move them to wherever they are and they can work. And then we'll have an empty shell of building that we can demolish if we so choose. That's just our point. It's not supposed to lead to a strike. It's just for us to agree that, okay, we are not just going to throw people out and make them redundant. That's just what there is to that.
Okay, well, you say that it's a withdrawal of service, but from what we also see, the strike action yesterday caused heavy traffic, and as a result, a lot of Nigerians couldn't get access to the airport. So, in addition to your withdrawal of service, it would seem that there was also deliberate action to make sure that the masses felt the result of your withdrawal of service. Is that correct?
Usually, when things are not happening the normal way that they should happen, you always see this kind of things that people variously refer to as collateral damage. Unfortunately, that situation arose. And in our statement to the press before the action, we also expressed regret that this was likely going to cause, this kind of situation, and advised that people who have businesses at the airport should seek alternative means either for movement or for travel. So you people are not aware that the airport road leading the two international airports is not a public road. It's actually a private road because it's just an access road. It's part of the airport. But people do use them are passed through. So all those issues are mixed together, and unfortunately, it resulted in that situation that we saw yesterday.
Well, I do not know if it's going to result in the same situation today because, as you said, people suffered yesterday. You've said this collateral damage. I do not know if you have the same intention to keep the same, make the same collateral damage today. But, some of the concessions that you have made with regards to the demand with regards to the Aerotropolis, some people will say, why is that so difficult to reach a consensus with the people from whom you're making these demands?
Yeah, okay. Quite frankly, we did not set out yesterday to do any. We did not set out yesterday to set. We are not. Am I muted?
Please go ahead, sir. I can hear you.
Okay. We did not set out yesterday, for example, to be on the roads. What happened is that we wanted to picket our offices at the terminals. But soldiers, particularly the Air Force, occupied those offices and made it impossible for us to picket the offices. So we did not plan to be anywhere near the road. But this happened as a result of the activity of the military. Today, however, we are also taking efforts because it's a warning strike. Because it's just a warning strike, we are making efforts also to see that we do not affect the movement of people, particularly on the roads. But that will be if the military, because the environment is heavily militarized right now. So if they permit, we will carry out our activities without disrupting anybody's movement. That's our plan.
Well, Mr. Ocheme Abba, General Secretary, National Union of Air Transport Employees, as well as Bankole Bernard, Chairman, Association of Aviation Training Organization of Nigeria. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of our conversation this morning, hoping that the authorities at various levels have taken their pick and will address as necessary. Thank you, gentlemen. Well, we've since been joined by Captain Musa Nuhu, who is Director General, Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. He's also joined us virtually this morning. Thank you, Captain Nuhu, for joining us this morning. Well, you've perhaps been able to listen to some of the conversation we've had with some of your workers. The question there now for you would be to ask, since they are working for you, they are working with you. You heard Mr. Abba say the other time, since they are working for you, they can't take their concerns anywhere else but to your doorstep. How is this issue being received and addressed by your office?
Good morning and welcome. First and foremost, I would like to make a correction. They are not working for me. We're all working for the federal government of Nigeria. We're all working for the Nigerian nation. We're working for the Nigerian public, including myself. So it's not like they are working for me personally. And we are responsible to the traveling public of the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I think whatever action we take, we must have that in the background. The unions have raised some issues that have been on the table well before we came to office, and we have continued to work to resolve this. These issues are not specific to NCA as an organization. It affects quite a few number of the aviation agencies. So we work collectively under the supervision of the Ministry of Aviation to resolve this particular issues raised by on a collective basis. The notice of strike action they raised two particular issues, although I'm aware there are other issues in the mind. And the two issues they raised was the issue of consequential adjustment and payments by the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, and also the issue of conditions of service that has been going on, I believe, for over 9 years with the Salaries and Wages of Commission and the head of service. We had a meeting with the union, I believe, on Sunday when this issue of strike came to try to explain to them. And the management of Nigerian Meteorological Agency do confirm the issues of the consequentials have been resolved and they will be paid this month, in this one, April salary. So that issue has been resolved. Then the other issue of the consequential salary adjustment, actually the Salary and Wages Commission has called for a meeting scheduled to take place today in Abuja at the offices. And during that meeting, officials of the head of service of government, officials of the budget office will be there, officials of the accountant general were there, and they've asked the agencies to provide financial documents and what they're trying to do to see if the agencies are in a position to be able to pay this, to comply with the conditions of new service, the new conditional service if approved. It doesn't make any sense for the government to approve when the various agencies do not have the capacity to do that. So efforts have been made. This were clearly explained to the unions, although not all of them participated in that meeting. However, all were invited, all acknowledged, but a few of them, for whatever reason, some said they had other meetings at the same time, turned down the invitation. I actually spoke to Comrade Ocheme on Saturday on the invitation, and he said they will not refuse any meeting we'll call to try and do this. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, I hope and I'm sure they have a legitimate reason they were not able to join.
Well, Captain, just one quick question on that meeting. Well, you've said that the Salaries and Wages Commission has called a meeting today. Was the Salaries and Wages Commission involved in the meeting of Sunday?
No, it was a prompt meeting and we were not able to get them, but we had official of the Ministry of Labor and Employment, the Director of Industrial Relationships that took part of the meeting. We have a copy of the invitation from Salaries and Wages Commission.
Well, it appears that the workers, the striking workers are not invited to that meeting. Is that correct?
Everybody's invited. Everybody, we are expecting them to join us.
Well, the understanding that was given to us earlier, my apologies for butting in, was that they haven't been invited to the meeting. At least the gentleman we spoke with earlier, General Secretary, Nigerian National Union of Air Transport Employees, Ocheme Abba, says they have not been invited to that meeting.
Well, we explained to them the agencies and the government have been invited, and we expected the union, we informed them. We expected them to be part of the meeting because meetings have been held in the past. I think sometime last year, a meeting was hosted by the Honorable Minister of Labor and Employment, which the Honorable Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, participated with the officials of the agencies and the unions. Yes, I understand a bit of their frustration, the ongoing saga, but efforts have been made. And during our meeting on Sunday, the unions attended confirmed they do not have specific problems with the aviation, that's the ministry and the agencies, because they are quite aware of the concerted efforts have been made to resolve this.
That was also represented earlier. My apologies for butting in again. That was represented earlier when we had this conversation with the gentleman. But, you know, it's on record that at least 3 times between January last year and this moment, the strikes have been called at least 3 times. 2 of those times, previous times, they suspended the strike based on, you know, results from the meetings. Perhaps it was because they weren't sure that the meeting of Sunday was going to provide anything, you know, make any headway to them. That's why they didn't even allow themselves to be persuaded to call up the strike that is ongoing now. What from your, and it's also been always been about the Salaries and Wages Commission not performing to par as far as the agencies are, the workers are concerned. For you, what has been the issue? Why this stalemate, so to speak?
Well, if you beg your pardon, the Salaries and Wages Commission is not an agency of aviation. Neither the Ministry of Aviation nor the aviation agencies have any control over the Salaries and Wages Commission. It's directly under the presidency. We can only make efforts to them, which has been ongoing, and trying to resolve this. We cannot force them, short of, with all due respect and apologies to anybody, short of putting a gun to somebody's head and having them sign the paper. I think we've done, on the aviation part, we've done all our efforts. And I believe also the Salaries and Wages Commission, they have their own internal processes, which they must comply with. But to me, for them to ask the agencies to come with their financial documents to show that we will be able to pay these new salaries, it's a very, very positive step towards concluding this ongoing issue for a considerable period of time. And I think since that has been, we should hold our guns and give opportunity for this minute. Let's hear what will come out of the meeting. And in the meeting, all the relevant bodies, the head of service, the Attorney General's office, the budget office are going to be there. These are all the bodies involved in this matter. Since they are going to participate, I think we should have give this meeting an opportunity to see. It shows that we are very close to conclusion. I understand the frustration of the unions, but going on strike, it's not the people you are complaining about that are affected. It's the innocent traveling, fair-paying passengers that will suffer from this strike. And it's also the aviation industry, the aviation sector, the airlines, the ground handlers, everybody that is going to suffer. And they absolutely have nothing. They have done nothing in this. I've spoken to the airlines. A lot of them, if they have their own way, they've even, some of them have even made pronouncements, comments to the National Assembly for the need to improve the conditions of the workers in the aviation industry. But those are the ones that are suffering.
Well, Captain,
the aviation, yes.
Pardon me, Mr. Abba earlier on was saying they didn't really intend to cause that much, discomfort to the passengers. And he says that the area was militarized such that they couldn't picket the area they wanted to picket, so they didn't have any choice. And in fact, he spoke to that statement by the Minister of Aviation, and he said that, well, aviation is not essential service. He described the minister's description of aviation as an essential service as a fallacy. But, this conversation keeps revolving around the passengers. We call them innocent passengers. But really, the passengers have been going through this for quite some time now. And it's not just about the strike. And I've been looking for this opportunity, really, to ask you this question on behalf of the innocent passengers. They can't go on strike when they are treated unfairly, when the flights are shifted back and forth, when they don't get any communication, when they try to seek redress and first trying to get through to the customer care is like hell. They're not, spoken to with respect. And when they even want to get refunds, it takes time, long time. They have to go online, write letters, do mails. I'm sure you've seen some of those cases. So let's try to at least get some reprieve for those innocent passengers this morning. When those issues arise, how much work have you been doing to ensure that passengers, or at least the airlines, do right by the passengers who have paid for the service? And most times, or a lot of times, let me just say, they do not get value for their service. So in terms of seeking refunds, what does the law say? How soon can they get their refunds? When they're not treated fairly by the airlines, what should they do? How do they get a remedy? Those questions abound, and I'd like you to speak to them this morning, Captain.
Well, thank you very much. That's a very important thing. I will have what we call the consumer rights and the regulations, and also in the Civil Aviation Act. And there are certain things depending on the length of the delay or the cancellation, there are certain compensation the airlines are supposed to pay the passengers. And a lot of passengers have complained, both to NCA and also sometimes to the Federal Consumer Competition Commission, which they have written to us, and actions have been taken about against these airlines. In fact, some of the cases have ended in litigation. And the problem is most of the time the tendency of the passengers not to report or make complaints. If we don't receive complaints from the passengers, to be honest, there's nothing much you can do. But even last week, we did engage with a couple of airlines on the issues of delay and trying to resolve these problems. Yes, I think a lot more can be done, and we started working to improve the situation of the passengers, the inconveniences, and the suffering they go through because of the delays and sometimes cancellations. I have been a victim of that, so I understand how frustrating and how horrible it can be, because people miss their connecting flights, people miss their appointments, both medical appointments, business appointments, and others, and that is not acceptable. No person paying for a service should go through that, and efforts have been made.
I'd like you to speak to the refund aspect quickly as we wind down. So how soon should I be able to get my refund if my flight is shifted, who knows, some hours ahead? Sometimes if it's even moved earlier, you get all of these messages. So how soon should I be able to get my refund? Because a lot of people want to choose another airline so they can meet that appointment. So should it take days, or I should get it immediately?
Well, it should be immediately, and we currently reviewing our regulations to review the what's there in the past that gives some days. And I don't think it's fair if my flight is cancelled, and what we have with the new regulation that will be signed into law very soon, when it's all cleaned up. As if you cancel my flight, you should put me on another flight immediately, or give me the option of getting refunded immediately, so that I can make other plans. I absolutely agree with you, and the efforts have been made. We just had a stakeholders meeting on this issue about sometime last week, and a review of regulations to update this and make it easier. The passengers, without the passengers, we don't exist. And exactly. In fact, the passengers are those who pay our salaries. The majority of the entire generated revenue of NCA, 80% or more, is from the 5% paid by the passengers. So they pay a salary.
Perhaps in the same vein, just this one, and please take it in 10 seconds if you can. Dr. Gabriel Lowe, president of Aviation Roundtable, once said, asked the question, who takes responsibility for financial losses when there are strikes? He also cited an example, for instance, of a domestic carrier reportedly losing 500 million naira due to MM2's shutdown. In that instance, can you hazard a guess as to how much is lost when there is a strike?
Honestly, I cannot, but it's certainly in the billions when you have a strike every day, from direct losses to the airlines and indirect losses to the economy, because when people miss their connections, a lot is lost. I can't see, but I can guarantee you it's in the billions.
In the billions, can you hazard one figure, 1 digit, 2 digit billions?
I can't, at least over $1 billion. At least, but I think I'm being very, very conservative. If you look at the direct and indirect losses.
Well, we look forward to, thank you so much, Captain. We look forward to the resolution of these issues, perhaps hopefully at the meeting that you mentioned this morning. Captain Musa Nuhu, Director General, Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, thank you so much for your time and your perspectives this morning.
Thank you. If you can just give me a second to make one comment. The meeting today is a process. Once the Salary and Wages Commission gives go ahead, these agencies can pay this money, and the condition they approve that goes to the head of service to approve the conditions of service. So it's a two-part process. Today's meeting is to determine the ability of the agencies to pay. Once it's done, then the head of service will use that input to approve the conditions of service. So if we tell you today everything is going
like
to
how
be
long
upgraded,
will that take, Captain? 1 month, 2 months?
Sir, I don't work in the office of the head of service.
Okay.
All I know that we'll push it for it to be out as soon as possible, because the workers have bared enough, and
right.
I think this should be ended as soon as possible.
Thank you so much for your perspectives again, Captain Nuhu.
Thank you.
We're back after now to take on another issue. Please stay with us.
Less than 24 hours after this declaration was made, some supporters of the Labour Party in Imo State are gathered at another venue for another governorship primary election, this time conducted by Abayomi Arabambi, a member of the Lamidi Apapa-led faction of the National Work Committee of the Labour Party. The governorship primaries produced Chibututu Uzuguzu as the winner.
Chief Doctor Chibututu Uzuguzu, having scored the lawful majority of all the delegates here present, is hereby declared the winner.
Mr. Izuguzo addresses the gathering.
I promise that if I become the governor of Imo State, I will make sure that all infrastructural facilities are made available. That thing that is in the urban area will be made available in the rural areas.
And in another part of town, yet another primary election is holding.
Then all delegates from Olu West.
The National Vice Chairman, Northeast, Alkali Mohammed Ibrahim, another member of the Lamidi Apapa faction of the National Working Committee, is spearheading the exercise. Ikechukwu Kegbu emerged as the winner of this primary election.
Our candidate, gubernatorial candidate in Imo State, Chief Ikenga, that will lead our Imo State.
Another faction of the Labour Party in Imo State, led by its chairman, Onyekulisi Festus, holds its primary election, producing Basil Maduka as winner. As at the last count, there are 4 candidates for the Labour Party in the Imo State governorship election. Residents are waiting to see how this plays out, ahead of the November 11 governorship election in the southeastern state.
Thank you for staying with us, and that's what we're looking at this point in time. The situation in the Labour Party that has led to the emergence of 4 governorship candidates for the Imo State governorship elections. That's a miracle, if you ask me.
4 different primaries.
4 different primaries, 4 governorship candidates, and all of them vying for 1 ticket. They're supposed to be vying for 1 seat, right? With other political parties. But in the studio to help us understand what could have led to all of this, we have Mr. Comrade Eragbe Ansem, who's the National Youth Leader of the Labour Party. Thank you for joining us. Also here is Dr. Abayomi Arabambi, the National Publicity Secretary of the Labour Party.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, Nigerians.
We're also expecting to join us first is Onyekulisi, who's a Chairman, Caretaker Committee, Labour Party in Imo State. And we had also invited to join us for this conversation Barrister Ihejirika Emeka, who is the Media Director to Senator Athana Chonu, who is one of the governorship of one of those that won the primary in Imo State. He had said he would join us to shed light on this whole matter, but today says he can't make it again. So hopefully we'll get to hear him and Mr. Unye Kulisi before the end of the show. But gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So let me ask, Dr. Abambi, you in that report put together by our correspondent, you announced the victory of Dr. Chibuchukwu Izuguzo, right?
Yes.
Okay, and Comrade Anselm, which of the primaries, who won in your own primary?
Chief Ukaibu Okechukwu Joseph Ikenga.
Chief Ikenga won in your own. Okay, so this is really interesting.
What I have been trying to understand, I mean, only recently, Mr. Abambi, you were here in our studios talking about the factionalization that has happened, not factionalization, but the dispute you currently have with the national chairman, Mr. Julius Abure. You've gone to court to challenge it, challenge him as chairman, and I think you want him to step down. As a result, one would think that if the problem is only with the chairman, perhaps, you know, many other people within the leadership of the party might be agreed on where the problem lies, and that shouldn't cause a problem within the state, I say,
structure.
Yeah, the state structures of the party. And even if there is a problem with this, you know, with the national, and it starts to factionalize, maybe those who support the national chairman and those who support the agitations that you have, it shouldn't be more than two. But what we're saying right now is the conduct of 4 different primaries at the state level in Imo State. How do we explain this breakdown, this total breakdown, it would seem, of what has happened at the national level?
Well, thank you very much. Before the advent of the court ruling, you know, restraining Abure and 3 others, we never knew that Abure, you know, dissolved the elected executive in Imo unilaterally, because his own NWC is all about him. He set up a caretaker headed by the Festus. He dissolved them again for a particular interest, and later he now set up a steering committee, which is unknown to law.
Okay, just a moment. So he dissolved the elected committee. Was that after the elections or before the elections?
No, before the election.
Before the election.
Yeah, before the governorship. Before the governorship.
After the presidential election.
After the presidential election. You know, he tried to avoid crisis before the presidential election. You know, after the presidential election, you know, he was going down the state to support, you know, some candidate against the Labour Party. So once you are not in tandem with him, you know, the USCO will be dissolved. So he now set up a caretaker for Festus. When those one were not doing the bidding, he now set up a steering committee headed by Mr. Peter Obi. It's unknown to law. We were not aware. So when we proceeded to Imo,
you said he set up a steering committee
for Imo State, headed by Mr. Peter Obi.
Okay.
On his own. Then the executive now went to court. We wrote a letter to INEC. Of us, we are not, you know, in the.
Who are the executives that went to court?
No, the executive in Imo before.
In Imo,
that was dissolved. So they went to court, and court restrained the NWC and INEC from not recognizing them, and that whatever we do in that state without them, you know, will end up in entirely immunity. We are not aware. So we wrote a letter to INEC, because Abure wrote a letter to INEC before, you know, the court restrained him, saying the primary will hold on 15. But our own was to be, you know, was to take place on the 16th. So in order for Abure to loop himself inside, he now directed his follower that, oh, they should also do their own on the 16th, which we, you know, we rejected vehemently. So on getting to Imo, that was when the REC informed us of the court order. We were supposed to go to that site where they went, but when I said, no, we are only going to monitor the Mr. Shipututu, that is where they are, and the ESCO that has judgment, we have no choice than to comply. That was why we have to, because we don't want to, you know, take risk. We can still use, you know, internal party machinery, because we are not submitted name. But when the people have a valid court order restraining the national chairman, not Abure, because, you know, when you go to court, you sue the, you know, highest office and Labour Party that they must not do anything that will go contrary to the decision of the court because the court said caretaker are illegal, talk less of standing committee. So that was what, transpired. And it is that standing committee that appointed Dr. Alex Ochiti to go and conduct primary, for the senator, which is going to be, for us, as a law-abiding citizen, is not going to hold water.
But just a moment, Nyota. Which faction then did you support? Is it the one that, or is it the faction of the group that went to court to get a restraining order? Which group are you supporting?
No, the people that went to court, the original executive, are the one are directed by the court. That then WC, you understand, that is the Labour Party. We have been restrained from having anything to do with the caretaker or the standing committee. We are not aware because this crisis started before the governorship election. At times, a national chairman will do something that most of you don't know. But when Anna calls us to order, I can say, if you play back that video, you will see ANEC official only attending the one I went to. We all of us went together, but we don't have a choice. When ANEC said, we will not come to that place because these people are the valid court order and their lawyer are servers. We have to obey. So we don't have a choice than to go there so that when we come to Abuja, we will now sit down in-house. It's only two primary. The one controlled by the caretaker is illegal. The one controlled by a Dr. Electricity is illegal because ab initio, the court has given a ruling that Abure and National Secretary must not be seen parading or occupying that office in any capacity. As one day, we are the one that conducted that, we will test, this thing in court. We are ready.
Okay, so Mr. Anslem,
so we are not fighting at all.
Comrade, I imagine that you were also at the same primary that he attended. Is that correct?
Oh, no, I was at the other side.
Which other side now? Which of the sides?
Yeah, Ikenga.
Is that the one of the steering committee or the one of the caretaker committee?
No, none of those.
None of those?
Like you observe, 4 primaries were held. Maybe I just put a little word on this. Because Abure started the process until he was restrained by FCTI court on the 4th of April. Now, those of us who were suspended earlier were reinstated on the 5th. So we assumed responsibility. Now, Abure had proposed the primary for an earlier date before we came in. So immediately we came in, Apapa being the acting national chairman of Labour Party by reason of the FCTI court restraining order on Abure, because the world needs to know that there's a difference between the 2 court orders. Quickly, while Abure, there was a suspension at his ward, and he went to Benin High Court to seek an enrollment order to prevent the NWC and NEC from implementing that suspension order. That's one, separate, for which the working committee has not done anything about because of that order from the Benin court. There is another order that borders on criminality. Yes, the 4th CID, Inspector General of Police, carried out the petition in Ebonyi over infractions. Now, the police investigated and indicted Abure, National Secretary, Treasurer, Organizing Secretary, for forgery, criminal conspiracy, and perjury. So this is the basis for the restraining order by the FCTI court on the 4th. Now, arising from there, we came to power on the 5th after NWC meeting. Now, this letter was written subsequently to INEC with respect to the primaries in Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi State. So we had shifted our date from what they proposed earlier to on the 16th. So by reason of this, we're all on the same page before I make the statement. Now, committees were set up, Gubernatorial Planning Committee. So for the Imo State, myself, Alhaji Alkali, the National Vice Chairman, Northeast, and Oko Splendor, were assigned to go to Imo ordinarily to carry out this responsibility.
By the
by the acting national chairman.
Chairman.
So, and himself was to go to Bayelsa and some other few places. But while we were there, like you saw, we carried out our own primaries. Unknown to us, just like I explained, now that there was a subsisting court order on the issues that were generated from the Abure's era. On the ESCOs, he dissolved. So, I only got to know about this really at the venue of the primaries. that another primary was taking place because of that reason. So he left.
So you had, 1 second here. So you got to the venue of the primaries and found out that Arabambi was holding another primary somewhere else.
Yes. No, we got no of the court order. INEC informed us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you now,
exactly.
But at that point in time, you had to go and hold a primary somewhere, and he holds a primary somewhere else. Couldn't the two of you? One second. So since you discovered, you got into town and okay, my colleague of whom both of us are on the same pathway, on the same page, is holding a primary here. Let's all move to that side. You didn't think to do that. You just continued.
Okay, no, because immediately that happened. Just a minute. I was with the resident electoral commissioner in Imo State. That day of that was on Saturday earlier, before I got this information. So there I asked, what is the position of law on this matter? If it now appears that INEC may not be able to supervise the election for which I came. Are we there? And let's say I said, it's a party issue, that what mattered at that point was we ought to have communicated the INEC first officially. And two, if for any reason INEC will not be on the ground, it's a party affair. We'll go ahead to conduct our primaries and submit to them, then...
Back to the same question. So he told you it's a party affair.
Yes.
But both of you sitting here are saying that you are on the same page. But yet you still went ahead to conduct a parallel primary. Two primaries at the same time. While the other two groups are having their own primaries, you held your own two primaries. One begins to wonder if you are really on the same page.
No, we are on the same page. Let me say this. It is not a problem from us. It was a problem from the past administration, the former national chairman, because when you do an election to elect an executive, it is in our constitution. They cannot be dissolved. Because you have a maximum tenure of 3 years. It dissolved, we will not know, because he and National Secretary, a lot of time, write letters that a lot of NWC members will not know. He set up a caretaker, thinking they will do his bidding. Those also fell out. He now set up a steering committee. If you look at the primary conducted for that senator, just look at them. You see Oseluka there, you see Dr. Otiti, all of them.
All of them members of your party?
Yes, members of the party, but they don't have the power in the constitution to conduct primary. So, then I want to remind you of something. Mr. Samawadi, all of you know him. He withdrew from the race on one condition. He said he's surprised that now they are now dollarizing, Labour Party primary, the delegate primary, and he left. Yeah, he withdrew and left. So what is happening in Labour Party is that the kind of people that thought they can have their way in a party, we, the older member, are telling them that we will not toe your line. As I speak to Nigerians now, we were in court yesterday, and the court said, I will not vacate the order. That order will succeed pending the full termination of ordinated summon. Their lawyer stormed out, he called Ajero, and they moved straight to the secretariat. As I speak to you now, they are in Asaba. They want to conduct a next meeting. Where those of us on this side will be due for suspension. They want to go and do convention. Now, we are in court seeking mandate. We are in court with PO seeking mandate. Same people are in Nasaba saying they will not respect the court order. We are waiting for them. They said they will not respect court order. But we will respect court order, and we will conclude this into logical conclusion. There is no way we are going to back out of this fight. Because Ajero was on here yesterday. All of you, you listen to what he was saying, that we are roading. They came to fumigate. When you came to fumigate a place, you want to kill the road there. We are not in that class. Ajero is not a member of Labour Party. I want to state it clearly to you. He's not a member of Labour Party. He is not the one to determine that he's a member of the Board of Trustees. Who gave him the letter? Where was the NWC, the meeting we had? Where was he? And I am surprised also, because I have to say it out now, PO should also state on the side of the law. If really we want to have anything in that tribunal, he must stand on the part of the law.
Just a quick reminder that all the representatives of the 4 governorship candidates in Imo State were invited for this conversation. All 4 of them were invited. I mean, the 4 people that emerged as possible candidates of the Labour Party in the governorship elections, their representatives were all invited here for this conversation. But so far, we have only 2 who say they are not exactly 2 different groups. They are the same. I mean, so...
But we're forced to go to 2 different primaries as a result of
the action of one of the Mr. Abure. Well, I understand our colleagues in Lagos have some questions for you.
It's okay.
Guys.
Well, thank you, Nyota. I just want to follow up, Mr. Rabami. Are you asking Mr. Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of your party, to then openly declare support for Alhaji Akpakpa? Or what exactly are you asking of him if you said that he should follow the law?
Yes. We are asking him to declare that open support for rule of law. If we have a national chairman that on his own volition forge the seal of the Chief Justice of the FCATI Court, if you have a chairman that produces his own treasury single account receipt, if you have a chairman that forge the signature of commissioner for oath, then, and a court of competent jurisdiction have looked into this matter and granted an injunction restraining them from parading themselves, Mr. B has no option that to stay on that side if truly we have a business to do in the election petition tribunal. Because the fact has to be stated clearly here now. They are in Asaba. And I am telling you confidently that he was also part and parcel of the people that organized Asaba. Now, when we have a valid court order, and you are now going ahead to do an illegality in Asaba, if the court now rule otherwise, they will not be accusing President Buhari, they will be accusing Tinubu, they will be accusing Atiku, knowing fully well that they are the one that is infringing, on the law of the land. Because they have no right under whatsoever. If you are looking for justice somewhere, then you must not trample on justice on the, from the other side. A court of competent jurisdiction has restrained Barrister Abure, Clement Ojukwu, the National Treasurer and also National Secretary, Alhaji Umar, from parading themselves as national officer of the party. So anything they do, we nullify it in the court,
well,
including
Rabami,
the three primaries they did. None of them will contest under Labour Party.
Pardon me.
Because
The way you speak,
to fight content.
I need to comment now,
None
Mr.
of those
Rabami.
people they pick
The way you speak
contest.
about those allegations matter-of-factly, I'd like you to speak to this. Has a court found him guilty? Because, in fact, following from what you said the court asked him to stop parading himself. Has a court competent jurisdiction found him guilty of these allegations which you are speaking about, which are very strong allegations?
No, they are here. We have given your studio a copy. What transpired was that we presented this before the court. Now we have a police report from the Inspector General of Police that they were found culpable of perjury.
Has a court, my question is, Mr. Rabami, has a court of competent jurisdiction found him guilty, given a final pronouncement that he is guilty of those allegations which you speak about?
No, the process is on. He was asked to stop parading himself as national officer.
So if the process is on, Mr. Rabambi, if the process is on, why do you then speak matter-of-factly that he did those things when you know fully well that the court has not given a final pronouncement?
No. Court doesn't investigate. It is the police that investigate.
No, but the court would pronounce someone guilty or otherwise. So as a court pronounced him guilty, that's what I'm trying to ask.
No, I said the process is on. Before the court will pronounce you guilty, once court said, step aside, stop parading yourself, and you refuse to obey that order, then a lot of questions needed to be asked.
Okay.
And that's what we're saying.
So it's important then to...
we are looking for justice from the Election Petition Tribunal. Are you getting me? We are looking for justice from the Election Petition Tribunal. We could not obey a simple court order. So are we going to obey the decision of the Election Petition Tribunal?
Okay, so it's important then, Mr. Rabambi, to qualify those allegations.
Side of the rule of law.
I understand. So it's important to qualify them as allegations, since, as you said, the process is on and the court has not pronounced him guilty.
He must stop parading himself.
Not speak matter-of-factly, because this is a national television and people might take it wrongly. But there was a picture of you that has been going around with the governor of Ogun State, and that question has been raised time and again. In fact, I had a guest speak to that and they suspect that you might even be a double agent. Today you're with an APC governor, and then the next moment you are saying you're a Labour Party person. So are you friends with the governor of the APC in Ogun State? To what extent is that influencing what you're doing right now is the question they ask.
Yeah, thank you very much. Valentine Osigbo, before the president election, gave a directive from Mr. President, our president candidate. It's all over. That where we don't have candidate, we can support a candidate of our choice. He cannot come out to deny it because he was on so many, a TV station when he was rolling out the system. We don't have a government candidate in Ogun State. Don't forget, most of these obedience, in Nasarawa, they supported PDP. In Enugu, they supported PDP. In Plateau, they supported PDP. In Cross River, they supported PDP. In Ebonyi, they supported APC, including our presidential candidate. He was on a rise when he said we don't have a candidate in Enugu State. He was on a rise when he said we don't have a candidate in Ebonyi. When Supreme Court has decided on that matter that Splendor Oko is the validly elected candidate. So they were the one that started and said, okay, wherever we don't have a candidate, I voted for Peter Obi during the presidential election, but I voted for Governor Dakwabia during the governorship election. And I voted for our assembly. I didn't vote for any assembly in the APC, but I voted for the governor because we have candidates in assembly, but we don't have for governor. So it's not a question of APC today, PDP tomorrow. Why was the ESCO in Imo State suspended? The one we are discussing, the elected ESCO. Apure suspended for reason best known to him. In Edo State, I put it to Apure. All our ASO assembly, they are members of PDP. All our assembly candidates, they are members of PDP. They are not members of APC. If you said they are not members of Labour, if you said they are members of PDP, if you said they are members of Labour Party, then we will come back here. I will come and expose him. They are from Godwin Obaseki.
Okay,
let
me ask Comrade
I'm saying it on record.
Yes, Mr. Arabambi, we heard you already. Thank you. Well, let me ask Comrade Anslem this next question. As my colleague sitting with you there, Nyota, has said, you have 4 governorship candidates from 4 primary jostling for 1 ticket of the Labour Party in the coming elections in November. Can you tell us whether or not INEC was represented at all 4 primaries, or it was just 1?
INEC came to...
That's for you, Comrade Anslem.
Basically, yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Basically, yeah, like I started explaining my part, the reality. We went on the 16th for our primaries, and we got information of the INEC supervisor to monitor that primary. Now, we found out that earlier, he had gone to Abure's venue. Because, mind you, there are meant to be 2 primaries. The illegal side, which ideally on the face of law is the Abure side. So the INEC people that came earlier had gone there. There were to be 2. The other one was to come to our own. I think INEC noticed that, probably in their wisdom. So first, when we came, went to the INEC office, waited for the person sent to us, we found out that he went to another venue. So I followed up with the INEC officials in their office. That was one. He said the other person was coming, probably now to our own. So while we waited for that, another incident occurred. Because like I said, I have just displayed here the authority with which I went to Imo State from leadership. Now, why that was the case, waiting for that person in the venue the other day, even though I had asked this question to the resident electoral commissioner to say, what if anything happens in the contrary? Because we have only seen one who has gone to the wrong venue. Say, whatever it is, you go and do your primaries, but ensure that the report is filed. So that was the comfort I had. So we went. We're still waiting. When we heard that the other person came and it was another venue, we now got this information from my publicity secretary to say they had a court order from the other ESCO. The reason as to why they had to conduct another primary contrary to the one I was standing in for. So, in summary, this is the position. This is what happened. But for us, because of this scenario that played out just within hours, we needed to manage the situation as it were. So I did mine successfully. And the report is in the media space.
He did his own successfully.
And he did his own successfully on the strength of what he had. So now we are back. And we have made presentation to leadership. In the circumstances we found ourselves.
Okay, yes. Just to clarify here again, that first of all, the 4 candidates in Imo State. Their representatives were invited for this conversation. Barrister Hejika Emeka, Media Director to Athan Achonu, and Festus Onyekulisi, Factional Chairman, Caretaker Committee, Labour Party Imo State, was also invited, but they could not make it. And you have the other two primaries represented here as well. So, Comrade Anselm.
Yes.
Before I ask you this question, let me just read this out. Sam Amadi, you said something about Sam Amadi, former chairman of NERC, how he left because they were dollarizing. But if I remember correctly, what he said, and our correspondent happened to be there, who said, what he said was that he's stepping down from Major General Jack Ogunewe at the ongoing Labour Party primaries, that Jack Ogunewe is the best for the job, and his decision is due to an advice and call from the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero. He did not say anything about dollarizing the process.
He addresses press outside.
Yeah, this is the press. This is what he said.
He addresses the press outside.
This is the press.
You know somebody was with him.
Anyway, I'm reading to you what he said to the press, contrary to what you're saying to the press here now. But anyway, this matter now, how are you going to resolve this matter? Because, I mean, the Labour Party, there are people, Nigerians out there who support the Labour Party, who are hooting for the Labour Party in Imo State. Now, you're causing them to be torn between 4 people from Imo State.
No, we didn't have 4.
There are 4 candidates.
No.
Hold on. Should I read out their name?
No, I said we don't have 4.
Senator Ethan Ajonu.
Let him finish the question.
Dr. Chibuchukwu Iziguzo. Ikechukwu Ukebu, right? Dr. Ikechukwu Ukebu.
That's Kenga.
And Mr. Basil Maduka, right? 4. And you say you don't have 4.
No, of all the 4, let me tell you, he told you they met with the REC, and REC explained to them, we have a valid court order here. Don't get your delegate agitated. Do what you want to do. But for me, where INEC was, with the valid court order, from those elected executives, we also had to attend.
So INEC was in 2 places?
No.
In its wisdom, was in 2 places?
No, with us.
With you. INEC, he said here, INEC was where Dr. Oti was.
Yes. I said from outside now, because of the valid court order, you understand? I don't know how they manage their space, but I can tell you that those 2 have nowhere they are going because of the subsisting court order.
So, youth leader,
but we harmonize our own.
Can this matter in the Labour Party be resolved quickly before the next election? It's a very quick answer.
Of course. Basically, dispute resolutions are internal in party. It is provided by law. So, more so for us, because we are on the path of law, the Apapa-led Labour Party, because there's no faction. I need to say this quickly. What we have is leadership issues, and the court is clear on that matter.
Labour Party is one.
Labour Party is one Labour Party, no faction, and the leader is Lamidi Bashir Apapa.
All right.
Now, for us, yes, this thing can be resolved. So now we are back. Internally, we look at what transpired and bring in the candidates, and we deal with this issue.
Thank you.
Amicably.
Thank you very much, Comrade Eragbe Anselm, National Youth Leader, Labour Party, and Dr. Abayami Arabambi, National Policy Secretary, Labour Party. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Remember that we also invited Barrister Hejika Emeka, Media Director to Athan Achonu, and Mr. Festus Onyekulisi, who's the Caretaker Committee Chairman, Labour Party, Imo State, but they could not make it to the show today. Thank you so much for coming on, gentlemen. And that is the show today.
Indeed. That's what we'll have to wrap it up. I was just making sure that we hadn't left any mails, any feedback. Doesn't look like that was gathered in good time. But not to worry. I'm sure that tomorrow we'll be able to take some of your feedback. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Neo Taegbe. Thank you for watching.
Don't worry, the conversation continues on social media. So head there now, Sunrise Daily Now, all our Twitter handles. Engage us. Of course, we'll always be part of that as much as we can. Have a fantastic day ahead. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
And keep Nigeria in your thoughts.
And prayers, right?
Nation. Yes. I'm Aya Makinde. Have a wonderful day.